I wish I was the monster you think I am." These words, delivered with seething rage and bitter defiance, mark the culmination of one of the most brilliant displays of intellect in television history. The trial of Tyrion Lannister for the murder of King Joffrey is not merely a legal proceeding, it is a stage upon which the dwarf of Casterly Rock demonstrates why he is, without question, the sharpest mind in Westeros. What appears to be his moment of greatest weakness becomes an exhibition of strategic genius that operates on multiple levels simultaneously, revealing a mind that thinks circles around every other player in the Game of Thrones. The impossible position. Before we can appreciate the brilliance of Tyrion's response, we must first understand the seemingly impossible position he finds himself in. This is not a fair trial. It is a public execution dressed in the trappings of justice, carefully orchestrated by his own family to eliminate him once and for all. The evidence against him is overwhelming, not because it's true, but because it has been meticulously manufactured. His sister, Cersei, consumed by hatred and grief, has pulled every string available to her. She has bribed witnesses, twisted innocent moments into damning testimony, and transformed Tyrion's own words and actions into a narrative of guilt. Shae, his former lover, has taken the stand and delivered the most devastating testimony of all, revealing intimate details of their relationship and painting Tyrion as a monster who threatened the king's life. The judges are not impartial arbiters of justice. They are his own father, Tywin, who has despised him since birth and sees this as an opportunity to be rid of his embarrassing son. His uncle Kevin, who will follow Tywin's lead without question, and Oberyn Martell, a wild card whose vote cannot be counted on. The crowd is hostile, baying for his blood, eager to see the demon monkey punished for killing their beloved king. Most men in this position would crumble. They would beg for mercy, proclaim their innocence in desperate tones, or simply accept their fate with resigned dignity. Tyrion Lannister does none of these things. Instead, he does something that only a mind of exceptional brilliance could conceive. He turns the trial itself into a weapon. The strategic assessment, reading the room in seconds. Watch Tyrion's face as the testimonies unfold. While others see only a man growing increasingly angry and desperate, we are witnessing something far more sophisticated. Tyrion is conducting a real-time strategic assessment, processing multiple layers of information simultaneously and calculating his options with the precision of a master tactician. He recognizes immediately that this trial cannot be won through traditional means. The evidence is too overwhelming, the judges too biased, the outcome too predetermined. A conventional defense, no matter how eloquent or truthful, will fail. The game is rigged, and playing by its rules guarantees defeat. But Tyrion also recognizes something else, something that everyone in that room has overlooked. He has nothing left to lose. This realization is not a source of despair, but of power. A man with nothing to lose is the most dangerous man in the room because he is free to act without constraint, to speak without filter, to burn bridges that others would desperately try to preserve. As Shae delivers her testimony, twisting their intimate moments into evidence of his guilt, Tyrion makes his decision. He sees the smug satisfaction on Cersei's face, the cold calculation in Tywin's eyes, the bloodlust of the crowd. And in that moment, he understands that there is a game being played here that transcends his individual fate, and he is going to expose it for all to see. The first layer, refusing to play their game. When Tyrion begins his speech, his first strategic move is brilliant in its simplicity. He refuses to play the game according to their rules. Instead of addressing the specific charges, instead of attempting to refute the testimony point by point, he immediately reframes the entire proceeding. I did not do it. I did not kill Joffrey, but I wish that I had. This opening is a masterclass in strategic communication. With one sentence, he accomplishes multiple objectives. He states his innocence clearly, preserving the truth for the historical record. But more importantly, he immediately shifts the conversation to what this trial is really about. By expressing his wish that he had killed Joffrey, he forces everyone in the room to confront the reality they all know but refuse to acknowledge. Joffrey was a monster, and the world is better off without him. This is not the statement of a desperate man scrambling for acquittal. This is the statement of a man who has decided that some truths are more important than his own survival, and he is going to speak them regardless of the cost. The second layer, exposing the hypocrisy. As Tyrion's speech builds, he moves to his second strategic objective, exposing the staggering hypocrisy of everyone in that room. This is where his intelligence truly shines, because he understands that the trial is not really about Joffrey's murder, it is about society's need for a scapegoat, and his status as a dwarf has made him the perfect target for their projection and hatred. Watching your vicious bastard die gave me more relief than 1,000 lying whores. The brutality of this line serves multiple purposes. On the surface, it appears to be an emotional outburst, a loss of control. But Tyrion is far too intelligent for that. This is calculated provocation, designed to strip away the veneer of civilization and reveal the ugly truth beneath. He is forcing them to confront what they really feel, what they have always felt about him. Then he pivots to the real accusation, the one that has followed him his entire life. I wish I was the monster you think I am. I wish I had enough poison for the whole pack of you. I would gladly give my life to watch you all swallow it. This is not confession. This is indictment. Tyrion is holding up a mirror to everyone in that room and forcing them to see themselves as he sees them, a pack of hypocrites and liars who have tormented him not for anything he has done, but simply for existing. He is exposing the trial as a farce, a continuation of the lifetime of abuse he has endured simply for being a dwarf. The third layer, the confession that isn't. The most brilliant aspect of Tyrion's speech is what comes next, when he appears to confess to his crimes. But listen carefully to what he actually says. I'm guilty of a far more monstrous crime. I am guilty of being a dwarf. This is genius-level rhetoric. He is confessing, but not to murder. He is confessing to the real crime he is being punished for, the crime of being different, of being physically imperfect in a world that values beauty and strength. He is confessing to the thing that has made him a target his entire life, the thing that his father has never forgiven him for, the thing that makes the crowd comfortable with his execution. By framing his dwarfism as a crime, he is doing something extraordinary. He is making the court confess its own prejudice. He is forcing everyone to acknowledge that this trial is not about justice, but about eliminating someone who makes them uncomfortable, someone who reminds them of their own imperfections and cruelty. I've been on trial for that my entire life. With this line, Tyrion expands the scope of the trial beyond this moment, beyond Joffrey's death, to encompass his entire existence. He is arguing that he has never been given a fair chance, that every moment of his life has been a trial in which he was judged and found wanting simply because of his physical form. And he is absolutely right. The fourth layer, the strategic trap. Now we reach the most sophisticated layer of Tyrion's strategy, the one that reveals just how far ahead he is thinking compared to everyone else in that room. Throughout his speech, he has been setting a trap, and it is about to spring closed. By provoking the court, by refusing to play their game, by exposing their hypocrisy and prejudice, Tyrion has created a situation where the predetermined verdict of guilty becomes untenable, not because he has proven his innocence, but because he has made it impossible for them to execute him without revealing themselves as exactly what he has accused them of being: cruel, prejudiced tyrants who kill people not for what they have done, but for what they are. Tywin, as always, recognizes the danger. He sees that Tyrion is turning this trial into something else, something that threatens the legitimacy of the crown itself. So he offers Tyrion the lifeline, the carefully prepared compromise that will end this spectacle before it spirals further out of control. But Tyrion, in a move that stuns even his father, refuses the lifeline. Instead, he makes a demand that changes everything. "I demand a trial by combat." This is the moment that reveals Tyrion's true genius. He has been thinking several moves ahead of everyone else in the room, and this has been his objective all along. He never intended to win the trial through conventional means, because he knew that was impossible. Instead, he has been working toward this exact moment, where he could invoke his legal right to trial by combat and completely upend the carefully orchestrated proceedings. Why trial by combat is so strategically sophisticated, we need to consider what Tyrion has actually accomplished. First, he has taken control of his own fate. Instead of accepting the predetermined guilty verdict, instead of allowing himself to be a passive victim of his family's machinations, he has seized agency and forced the trial into a form where the outcome is genuinely uncertain. Second, he has put Cersei and Tywin in an extremely uncomfortable position. They can no longer simply execute him through legal manipulation. Now they must find a champion willing to fight for the crown, and that champion must actually win the combat. The element of uncertainty has been reintroduced into a situation they thought they had completely controlled. Third, and most brilliantly, he has created a situation where the gods themselves will judge his innocence or guilt. In the religious and cultural context of Westeros, trial by combat is not simply a fight. It is a divine judgment where the gods ensure that the righteous prevail. By invoking this right, Tyrion is elevating his case beyond the earthly prejudices of the court to a higher authority. This is particularly devastating to Cersei and Tywin's position because it undermines the entire narrative they have constructed. They have been arguing that Tyrion is guilty based on evidence and testimony, but by accepting trial by combat, by allowing the gods to decide, they are implicitly acknowledging that their earthly judgment might be flawed, that there is doubt about his guilt. The psychological warfare. Beyond the legal and strategic implications, Tyrion's demand for trial by combat represents a devastating piece of psychological warfare, particularly against his father. Tywin Lannister is a man who prides himself on control, on careful planning, on manipulating events to achieve his desired outcomes. He has orchestrated this entire trial to eliminate his embarrassing son while maintaining the appearance of justice and legitimacy. Tyrion's demand shatters that control. With 4 words, he has transformed a certainty into a gamble. Tywin must now watch as his plans are subjected to the chaos and uncertainty of single combat. The man who controls everything suddenly cannot control the most important outcome. Moreover, Tyrion has done this publicly, in front of the entire court. Tywin cannot simply refuse the demand without appearing to deny Tyrion his legal rights, which would undermine the very appearance of justice he has been trying to maintain. He is trapped by the same system he tried to trap his son. The look on Tywin's face in this moment tells us everything. It is not just anger or frustration, it is the expression of a master strategist who has been outmaneuvered by an opponent he underestimated. It is the realization that his son, the one he has always dismissed as a disappointment, is actually his equal in cunning and perhaps his superior in adaptability. The comparison: why Tyrion outthinks everyone. To truly appreciate Tyrion's brilliance in this scene, it is instructive to compare his approach to how other intelligent characters in Game of Thrones would have handled the same situation. Littlefinger, for all his cunning, would have attempted to scheme his way out through backroom deals and manipulation. He would have tried to find leverage over the judges, to bribe witnesses, to create alternative narratives. But this approach requires time and freedom of movement, neither of which Tyrion possesses. Littlefinger's intelligence is suited for long-term manipulation, not desperate immediate crises. Varys would have attempted to work through intermediaries, to subtly influence the proceedings through whispered information and strategic revelations. But Varys's power comes from his network of spies and his ability to operate in the shadows. Tyrion, standing alone in open court, cannot employ these tools. Tywin himself would have attempted to maintain control through sheer force of will and authority, using his position and reputation to dominate the proceedings. But Tyrion has no such position or authority to draw upon. He is the accused, the powerless party in this dynamic. Even Olenna Tyrell, the Queen of Thorns, whose wit and cunning rival Tyrion's own, would likely have attempted a more conventional defense, using her sharp tongue to dissect the prosecution's case and expose its weaknesses. But Tyrion recognizes that such an approach, while satisfying, would ultimately fail against evidence that has been so thoroughly fabricated. What sets Tyrion apart is his ability to think beyond conventional strategies, to recognize when traditional approaches will fail, and to innovate a completely new solution. He doesn't try to win the game as it has been designed, he changes the game entirely. The intelligence of emotional honesty. One aspect of Tyrion's intelligence that is often overlooked is his willingness to embrace emotional honesty, even when it appears tactically disadvantageous. Most strategists in his position would carefully control their emotional presentation, maintaining a facade of calm reasonableness to curry favor with the judges and the crowd. Tyrion does the opposite. He unleashes his rage, his bitterness, his pain. He speaks truths that others would carefully conceal. And yet, this apparent loss of control is itself a form of intelligence. Tyrion understands that in some situations, raw honesty is more powerful than calculated performance. By speaking his truth without filter, he strips away the comfortable lies that allow the court to pretend this is about justice rather than prejudice. This emotional honesty also serves a strategic purpose. It makes his subsequent demand for trial by combat feel inevitable rather than calculated. The crowd sees a man pushed beyond endurance, demanding his right to divine judgment. They don't see the strategic mastermind who has been working toward this exact outcome from the moment he recognized the trial was rigged. The long game, seeds planted for the future. Another dimension of Tyrion's intelligence revealed in this scene is his understanding of the long game. Even as he fights for his immediate survival, he is planting seeds that will bear fruit later. His public exposure of the court's hypocrisy and prejudice, his indictment of King's Landing society, his refusal to accept their judgment, all of these things are creating a narrative that will follow him and shape how he is perceived. When Tyrion eventually escapes King's Landing and makes his way to Daenerys Targaryen, the reputation he has built through moments like this will precede him. He will be known not as a simple criminal, but as a man who stood against injustice, who spoke truth to power, who refused to be broken by a corrupt system. This reputation will be instrumental in his ability to position himself as an advisor to the Dragon Queen. Moreover, the trial by combat creates an opportunity that wouldn't exist with a simple guilty verdict. If his champion wins, Tyrion walks free. If his champion loses, he at least dies with honor rather than being executed as a convicted murderer. Either outcome is better than accepting the predetermined guilty verdict. This is the thinking of a man who is always calculating angles, always looking for the path that offers the most strategic value even in the worst circumstances. The mastery of timing. The timing of Tyrion's demand for trial by combat is itself a demonstration of his strategic acumen. He doesn't make the demand at the beginning of the trial, when it might seem like a desperate move by a guilty man. He doesn't make it in the middle, when it could be interpreted as panic. He makes it at the exact moment when he has fully exposed the trial as a farce, when the emotional temperature in the room is at its peak, when his moral authority is at its strongest despite his legal position being at its weakest. This timing ensures maximum impact. The demand doesn't come across as the last resort of a desperate man, but as the righteous invocation of sacred law by someone who has been grievously wronged. The build-up through his speech creates the context that gives his demand its full weight and power. Furthermore, by waiting until after Shay's testimony, Tyrion ensures that he has extracted maximum value from his emotional honesty. If he had called for trial by combat earlier, he would have lost the opportunity to deliver his devastating indictment of King's Landing society. The timing allows him to accomplish multiple objectives in sequence: expose the hypocrisy, reclaim his dignity, and seize control of his fate. The intellectual courage. Perhaps the most profound demonstration of Tyrion's intelligence in this scene is something that goes beyond mere strategic calculation: the intellectual courage to face the truth and act on it regardless of the consequences. Lesser minds retreat into comforting delusions when faced with impossible situations. They tell themselves that surely reason will prevail, that surely justice will be done, that surely if they just explain clearly enough, people will understand. Tyrion has no such illusions. He sees the situation exactly as it is, in all its ugliness and injustice. And rather than retreating from this truth or trying to soften it with false hope, he embraces it completely and builds his strategy around it. This ability to see clearly, to strip away comfortable lies and face harsh reality, is the foundation of all his strategic success. It takes intelligence to conceive of clever strategies, but it takes a special kind of intelligence, a rarer kind, to see the world as it truly is, rather than as you wish it to be. Tyrion possesses this rarer intelligence, and it is what allows him to outthink opponents who are more powerful, more respected, and more conventionally positioned for success. The legacy of this moment. The trial scene is not just a moment of crisis survived, it is a defining moment that crystallizes everything that makes Tyrion Lannister the most intelligent character in Game of Thrones. In this scene, we see all the dimensions of his genius on full display: his strategic thinking, his psychological insight, his rhetorical skill, his emotional intelligence, his ability to innovate under pressure, and his courage to face harsh truths. Other characters may possess some of these qualities. Littlefinger has strategic cunning, Varys has psychological insight, Tywin has force of will, but only Tyrion combines all of these elements with the ability to adapt in real time to changing circumstances and the willingness to take enormous risks when necessary. The trial by combat that results from this scene will have its own drama and tragedy, but the brilliance of this moment lies not in what comes after, but in what Tyrion accomplishes here, transforming what should have been his humiliating defeat into a demonstration of intellectual dominance that even his father cannot help but recognize. Conclusion: the mind that sees furthest. I wish I was the monster you think I am. These words, which opened our exploration, encapsulate everything that makes Tyrion Lannister special. They reveal a mind that understands how he is perceived, that recognizes the gap between perception and reality, and that has the courage to weaponize that understanding. Throughout his trial, Tyrion demonstrates that true intelligence is not just about having clever ideas or making cunning plans. It is about seeing clearly, thinking flexibly, acting courageously, and understanding human nature at its deepest levels. It is about recognizing when conventional approaches will fail and having the creativity to invent new ones. It is about maintaining agency even in moments of apparent powerlessness. This is why Tyrion Lannister stands above all other characters in Game of Thrones in terms of pure intelligence, not because he never makes mistakes or because he always wins, but because his mind operates on more levels simultaneously than anyone else's, because he sees further and deeper than his opponents, and because he has the rare courage to think and act on truths that others refuse to acknowledge. In a world of schemers and warriors, of lords and ladies playing the Game of Thrones, Tyrion Lannister proves that the sharpest weapon is not a sword or an army or even a dragon. It is a mind that refuses to be constrained by convention, that sees the world as it truly is, and that has the courage to act on that vision regardless of the cost. The trial scene is not just Tyrion's finest moment, it is a masterclass in what human intelligence, properly applied, can accomplish even in the most desperate circumstances.